This is Build It Baby, the show for big ideas, brave pivots, and bold next chapters. So let's do it. Let's build it, baby. Hey there, Penelope Bent here. Welcome to Build It Baby, the podcast where we stop replaying the same old stories and start building new ones. I'm talking success by design. So let's build it, baby. Well, it's just about that time of the year when we're getting ready to close 2025 and step into a new chapter of our lives in 2026. And it's really made me start thinking about what we're taking with us on this next adventure of this new year. And I've realized that people don't repeat their past because they're weak. They repeat it because they're carrying the same unprocessed story into every new chapter. Have you ever noticed how your mind loves to hit replay on a bad experience over and over, like it's your favorite scene from probably the worst movie that you've ever seen? Maybe it's something someone said, maybe something you did, or something that didn't turn out the way you planned. Here's the kicker. Your brain doesn't know the difference between remembering and reliving. Every time you recall that memory, your body feels it again. The same emotions, the same stress, the same energy drain. So every time you replay the moment, you're feeding it oxygen. You're giving it airtime in your own personal highlight reel. I used to think, I'm letting them live rent-free in my head. When something painful happens, whether it's rejection or embarrassment or betrayal or failure, we automatically tag it with this little sticky note that says, "Remember this, it hurt, so make sure to avoid it next time." The problem, that note never seems to have an expiration date. The memory just sits there, looping itself, replaying every time something even remotely similar happens. You think you're being cautious, but what you're really doing is keeping yourself captive. And that loop, it keeps you from trying again, trusting again, and building again. So I've really gotten into this cooking thing, and there's a great chef that I have purchased so many of her cookbooks, and I hope I pronounce her name correctly, Ina Garten. And she has a brand new book out, and she made a comment about how we as humans live in a cage with the door wide open. And it made me start thinking about all of our experiences in our lives and all of the positives and all the negatives and how much we move forward and how we keep chewing on shit that happened 30 years ago. So I'm not suggesting that you need to erase the past. Your memory isn't the problem, but I do believe that perhaps the meaning you have attached to it is the problem. And you have every right to change that meaning. Your past might explain you, but it sure as hell doesn't define you. It only defines you if you allow it to define you. This is your choice. So here I think is what's really happening in your brain. I've done some research on this and learned that your brain is a pattern-making machine. It runs tens of thousands of thoughts a day, and most of them are repeats from, yesterday or past experiences. And I asked the question, well, why? Why is this happening? Well, apparently the brain really loves repetition. It feels very safe with repetition. There's a part of our brain within this system that it's kind of like an internal filter. Its job is to scan your world for what feels familiar and relevant to you. So if you've been rehearsing a thought like, I always mess things up, or people can't be trusted, your brain starts looking for evidence to support that story. Not because it's trying to sabotage you, but because it's trying to confirm what it already believes. It's not searching for truth. It's just searching for familiarity. So those stories, those interpretations, the meaning you gave the experience, they're all yours. And your brain is hardwired to avoid pain, rejection, and loss. That's why it loves to replay the old hurts. It thinks it's protecting you. And here's the catch. When you constantly focus on what you don't want to have happen, your attention just keeps circling the same patterns. It's almost as though the more you want to avoid what negative experiences, the more that you're bringing them into this next chapter of your life. And scientifically, your brain, stays alert for more of the same. And I think spiritually, you begin moving toward what you focus on. So without realizing it, you end up reinforcing the very thing you're trying to avoid. That's why this episode isn't about pretending you're fearless. It's about trust. Trusting yourself, trusting your resilience, trusting that you've survived before and you can survive again. So I believe trust is remembering all the times you survived what you thought you couldn't. Trust says, I can handle that. If I could handle that then, I can handle it now. And here's the most powerful truth of all. So many of the experiences we've been dragging through our life belong to previous chapters. They made sense then with the knowledge you had, the tools you had, the version of of you that existed at that time. But here's the truth. That chapter is over, and you don't need to keep carrying the weight of these experiences into the next chapter. I have had a billion of those, what the flock was I thinking? But I realized over the years that was my limited knowledge or skill set at the time. It's so easy, that what do they say, hindsight's 20/20? It's easy to go back over our lives and say, oh, Jesus, that was the worst decision I ever made. But really, when you look at who and where you were at that time, sometimes you can completely understand, why'd you make that decision, why you choose to marry that person, why you chose to go out on a limb and spend money on an investment of a particular business that you thought would be really successful, and it turned out to just not have the parts and pieces that were going to be required to make it really work. Does that mean that you can't do it again? No, it just means that that's what the skill set was, your skill set was at the time. So I'd like to make a suggestion to you. So what if just for today or for the new year, you decide to write a new fresh chapter? Not as naivete, but as strategy with intention, by design. So I'd like to ask you to consider this little exercise. I'd like to suggest that you sit down at your desk with all the old chapters of your life spread out in front of you and revisit these unprocessed stories, the experiences, or the tragedies. And ask yourself, what was my participation in this? What can I take away? What did I learn in those experiences that will help me as I move forward on the next chapter? And then I would like to ask you to forgive those that have hurt you, not because you're, a saint, but because you're not. We all have made mistakes. If we want to be forgiven for our missteps, then we must forgive others for theirs. And then, in addition, don't try to figure out the why Why did they treat me so badly? I mean, you will spend so many restless nights asking yourself why. And here's the key to it. Their why is none of your damn business. Your why is the important why. Why do I want to keep feeling the pain of the event over and over again on a never-ending loop? And finally, I think it's really important to take a moment and really forgive yourself for the messes you've made. Understanding there's no sunshine without a bit of rain. Life is a complex journey. It's not for the weak of heart. But as creators and designers of our own lives, we can decide whether we choose to carry the pain with us into the next chapter of our lives or choose to remember the experience as only something that happened then. When you feel at peace, determined, or complete, tuck those chapters neatly in your briefcase or tote bag, for you will always carry them with you. But begin this year looking forward, not backward. This is your time. This is your choice to write a new chapter. So here's the part where I tell you exactly what I know. These are my knowings, the things I no longer question because they've shown themselves to me again and again. Not from a book, but from building, getting knocked down, getting back up, and doing this work in the real world. Okay, so here are my knowings. I know that all the obstacles in my life have been contributed to the person that I am today. It is my perception of them that matters. I have always found there was a gift inside all of those experiences. Number 2, I know that I am a creator of my life. What I look for, I always find. And number 3, I know that I move into this next year with clarity and confidence. So there are my knowings. Okay. Now it's time for our listener question. So here we go. This is from Sophia in Finland. Is that exciting? Someone's sending us a question from Finland. Okay, so here's Sophia's question. If you were to open a business in Finland, what type would it be? Great question, Sophia. Thank you so much for sending this one over. So what I understand, if I understand what's going on in Finland correctly, I know that you've got a lot of aging population, and I know that you have had a shortage of healthcare professionals, nurses, and so on and so forth. So I think given the understanding of the aging population, I probably would consider building something that would be of assistance to folks in their aging process. For example, starting a company that provides professionals that can go into these residents and help with some everyday pieces, health, subscription, medication, giving, that type of thing from a healthcare perspective. Or maybe create something that is just bringing a professional assistant on board. I think sometimes as we age, we would probably receive the idea if we knew that we were hiring an assistant to help us with our days, or to help us run some of the personal business that we have. I mean, that kind of would just be off the top of my head. The other thing that I would consider is that because of the shortage of the nurses, I know here in California, they have a lot of traveling doctors and traveling nurses. And I probably would set up some type of a base camp, some type of an operation that would reach out to doctors or nurses and bring them in for, a 9 or 10 month run, bringing, specialty physicians in that could work at some of the different facilities. So I might look at the idea of a traveling nurse or a traveling doctor. I don't know what all those requirements would be coming from another country, but even if it was just coming from another region, that you could move the pros around that you already have in Finland and just bring them into some of the areas that don't have regular staff members. So it would be kind of an alternating circle of pros that would be distributed throughout the regions in Finland. Anyhow, those are a couple of ideas that might work. Just saying. Thank you so much, Sophia. Love hearing from our friends in Finland. Well, it is almost that time, the end of the year and the beginning of a new one. So here's what I want to leave you with today. You don't need more proof, and you don't need permission. And you don't need to replay the past one more time to understand it better. You already lived it. You already survived it. And you already grew beyond it. Trust isn't about believing nothing will ever go wrong again. Trust is knowing that no matter what happens, you have the capacity to meet it head on. Trust is closing the book gently and choosing to write forward. So as you move into this next chapter, this next season, this next year, ask yourself this one simple question. What would I build if I trusted myself just a little more? Let that be your compass. Let that be your strategy. And let that be your design. Because trust and focus travel together. And what you look for, you'll always find. Always best, P. Build It Baby is a Rainy Day Production House original. Hosted by Penelope Bent and produced and edited by Morgan Clymer. Music by Yuri Shemshashin and Oleksiy Holobiev. If this episode spoke to you, please follow the show and leave a review. It helps more dreamers like you find us. And remember, you're not just building a bold business or a career, you're building a bold life.